In this lesson, we'll begin creating a joint system for the character's torso. So this is going to be another really fun topic. See, what we'll do is going to create just one bone object, which is the ideal length of the torso. So from the hips up to the base of the neck. And then from there, we'll work with the insert joint tool to quickly insert a joint along that length for our chest. And by using the insert joint tool, it will make sure that the orientation is the same as our root or source. So we don't have to worry about reorienting that joint. And then we'll create a pelvis bone, but then we'll go ahead and spend the next lesson learning how a tool can be created to quickly segment a chain. Because with just those few joints, we can't really get some good results from the torso, right? We have a chest bone, we have a pelvis, but what about the joints in between? So instead of creating all of those, we can use a script to get this done much faster. And the script will be used not only for this torso, of course, but we can use it for any part of the rig where we need to set up a twist rig. So we'll use it for the forearms, for the shoulders, the thighs, the shins, all throughout the character so we can hold volume. So this tool will be used to help us save a lot of time. All right, fantastic. So knowing that, let's say we go ahead and first create our bone object. Moving over to the side view, we'll go ahead and then grab our joint tool. All right, from there, I'll just go ahead and create one bone object right next to the character. We'll go ahead and make sure it's centered after we have finished creating it. We'll hold down the X key and we'll just snap to grid. So there's one. We'll go a few lines above and snap again. So now this chain is straight. All right, great. So from here, we'll go ahead and move over to our perspective view. Let's go ahead and hide the character. Now what we can do is go ahead and center this bone between the two thighs. And by doing so, it'll make sure that when we rotate back and forth, and in this case in the y-axis, we won't get any buckling in the knees. Buckling can be really ugly, and to fix it, we'd have to do a lot of counter keying. So to prevent that, we can just make sure our root is centered between the two thighs. All right, sweet. So how do we do that? Well, we can use a point constraint. Later, I'm going to show you a tool that we have built in Enhancing My Toolset with Python to quickly apply and remove constraints. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that shortly. But for right now, let's go ahead and grab the two thigh bones. I'll now go ahead and shift select our new bone, and we will grab the point constraint tool. Go into our option box. We'll just make sure our settings are reset. We don't want maintain offset on, so we'll make sure that's off. And we'll click add. So now this bone object is centered. Fantastic. Now from here, we no longer need the constraint. So we could either select it from here, add it to the select by name field. Once it's selected, we can remove it, or we can go ahead and find it from the outliner. We'll go there, expand the joint. There's the point constraint, and now we can go ahead and delete it. There's yet another way we can do this. We can use code. Let me go ahead and undo this back to before the constraint was applied. Now watch this. This is a really neat way of quickly centering an object. Let's go ahead and switch this over to Mel. We can use this technique with Python, of course, but I'm going to show you how to do this with Mel, and then you can then figure out how to do this with Python by going through our Python courses. All right, so let's go ahead and type in the following. That's going to be delete. And then following that, we'll go ahead and add two single ticks. These are the marks found above the tab key. So we'll just go ahead and hit that twice. And then inside, we'll go ahead and type in point constraint with a capital C for constraint. All right, fantastic. So what this is going to do is it's going to apply the point constraint, but then it will go ahead and remove it afterwards. So watch this. When we go ahead and run this code, you can see that our object has now been centered and we don't have a point constraint to deal with. All right, sweet. So again, we have just another way of quickly centering an object. All right, fantastic. So from here, what I'd like to do is go ahead and bring back the character. I'd like to go ahead and grab both joints, go to the radius, and start increasing that, maybe to about a value of 2. That's much better. We can now go ahead and grab our end joint, and let's go ahead and move this all the way up to the base of the neck. All right, sweet. And then feel free to go ahead and use wireframe mode just to make sure we get to the base of the neck. All right, that looks good. So from there, I'll go back to shaded mode. And we know that our end joints are not reset, or their orientation does not match the joint before it, its parent. So let's go ahead and run our tool to fix that. Fantastic. So now X is pointed up, Z is forward, and so on. Okay, so from here, let's say we do this. We'll now go ahead and create our chest joint. We'll use the Insert Joint tool to do that. Let's go ahead and grab our skeleton menu. From there, we'll go ahead and find the Insert Joint tool. Getting close, there it is. Right underneath the Spline IK tool. All right, great. Now, let's go ahead and click on our root and just go ahead and bring this up to the chest. And there we go. We've managed to quickly create this bone. Remember to use wireframe unshaded just to make sure that it's placed in the right spot. And after it's set, we know that when we start to translate, of course, the entire chain will follow. So we're now pulling that end joint. But if you want to just influence the chest joint, if you need to affect that and that only, you can hold down the D key, which will temporarily put you into pivot mode. And now you can start to use the pivot handle to adjust the placement of that joint. Very helpful. All right, fantastic. So now, let's say we do this. We'll go in and rename these joints, and we'll create our pelvis bone. So this is our root. Let's go ahead and name that bind underscore root 01. Next we have the chest. So that's going to be bind chest 01. Then we have the end joint for the chest. Now this end joint, we can go ahead and use this as our neck joint as well. All right, so we don't have to name this chest end. I'll go ahead and name this bind underscore neck 01. All right, fantastic. So all of these have been renamed. Let's say we do this. We'll go ahead and create our pelvis next. We'll move back to our side view. We'll go ahead and grab our joint tool. And again, we'll just snap to grid first. Holding down the X key, we'll snap a few times. There we go. Let's hit enter. And with both joints selected, we'll go ahead and set the radius to 2. All right, sweet. We might go ahead and take this end joint and pull it down a bit more, locally in the X-axis. If you're wanting to check your Move Tools mode, you can always just go ahead and hold down the W key and the left mouse button, and by doing so, you can use any one of these modes here. Here's Object Mode, which I tend to use at times just to figure out the orientation of an object. But underneath Axis, we can get to Local. And this is how we can move our objects locally according to the parent space. All right, fantastic. So after we've done that, we can then go ahead and move back to our perspective view. Let's go ahead and hide our character again. Let's take the root here and we'll snap it over to our root bone. Now, if we hold down the V key and middle mouse button drag, you can see we're having some trouble. That's simply because we have one axis selected on our move tool. So all we need to do is go ahead and click right here in the center to refresh it. And now when we hold down the V key and middle mouse button drag, we can move in all axes and snap that bone. All right, sweet. So what I'd like to do from here is go ahead and grab it and the end joint and go ahead and take a look at our model. You'll see that we need to increase the radius a bit more just so we can select between the two joints, between the root and the pelvis. So I just brought back the model as well just to make sure that this is in a good spot. All right, fantastic. So from here, we'd want to go ahead and take our pelvis and parent to the root. So you could either do that from the viewport or middle mouse button drag underneath the roots hierarchy. Fantastic. So from there, we can go ahead and rename our pelvis. That's going to be bind underscore pelvis 01. Let's go ahead and copy this name, expand its hierarchy so we can rename its end joint. Let's paste, and that's going to be BE pelvis 01. All right, fantastic. So guess what? We have our pelvis bone in place. What that means is we can go ahead and take our thighs and parent to the pelvis. So let's do that. We'll take the two thigh bones. We'll shift select the pelvis, press the P key. Now that will remove those bones from the joints group, but no worries. We simply need to go ahead and take our root and middle mouse button drag inside of our joints group, and there we have it. So everything is again nice and organized. Fantastic. All right, great. So now that all of these things are done, let's say we go ahead and stop the lesson here. In the next lesson, I'll go ahead and show you again how a tool can be created to quickly add more resolution to a bone.